Anglican Archbishop Thabo Makgoba has joined global religious leaders in calling for a de-escalation of the Russia-Ukraine conflict. He's calling for a high-level peace initiative. The Archbishop joins us tonight to talk more about what could be done about the crisis. Archbishop, a very good evening to you. Welcome to News at Prime. So how would this intervention that you have in mind actually work?
Tembegile, thank you so much. Let me also start first by saying my heart goes out to the Russians. My heart goes out to the Ukrainian people who are trapped in this war and aggression, which is unnecessary. How it will work is most people in Ukraine and Russia are people of faith, and the majority are from different either Catholic or Russian Orthodox or other small groups. So I see that the UN and Security Council and the rest can send all their political principals to negotiate. But I see the role of faith, perhaps Archbishop of Canterbury and the Vatican and the World Council of Churches, also at a different level intervening and speaking to the hearts, not the head only. So in broad stroke, this is how I see it panning out.
Would it be a meeting of church leaders sitting down with leaders of Russia and Ukraine at the very highest level, i.e. the presidents?
Well, I hope it will be the meeting of church leaders and parishioners and church leaders urging parishioners the world over, and particularly around the region, to say, soak this matter in prayer. We know once we soak a particular matter in prayer, that the human impact, the spiritual impact sometimes outsmarts even the practical technocratic solution. So I see that many levels. Like today, we formed a silent protest at the steps of the cathedral, and I hope that those that are forming human chain in other parts, that is still part of communicating that war demeans and kills. It will never win the peace. And then those that are gifted in the art of negotiation, maybe as church leaders. You can imagine Archbishop of Canterbury, the Pope, the Russian Orthodox Patriarch, also meeting at their level, and then dispatching other people to go and engage with the highest authorities within Russia and Ukraine and globally, because it is not a Ukrainian problem. I think this is a human problem and a spiritual problem from my context.
Okay, but if diplomacy has failed, why would the leaders of the respective countries, I wonder, be more willing to listen and negotiate better around a table with faith leaders?
Diplomacy never fails. Never fails. I mean, I remember even here in South Africa, when we were despairing and saying diplomacy has failed, we dispatched a number of people to pray and interfaith and ecumenically, and we kept on knocking at the United Nations, and the United Nations put moral pressure to bear on the apartheid government. And we are a democratic and free country, so we will pray people into action. We will pray as they act, and we will highlight the fact that these are human beings, and we will highlight the fact that should we not talk, and there's desperation that may escalate nuclear reaction there. I mean, all of us will be affected. So wherever we can knock and talk, we will knock and talk. We will pray for diplomacy. It hasn't actually started at the moment. It has to intensify. And we will have to pray for those that are using diplomacy. But there is also what I call spiritual diplomacy, church interventions, eyeball-to-eyeball interventions of the faithful who could form a human chain and say enough is enough as Russians, as Ukrainians, and as people around that area.
But the key to that intervention is that often when conflicts such as this break out, I mean, now Russia has invaded Ukraine almost a week now. Yes, the Ukrainians are fighting back, but both sides are so insistent that they are right in this. And in order for any discussion to go forward, the other wants the other party to make concessions and to admit that they are in the wrong. So can any intervening party, even if it is faith leaders, even if it is another country, proceed with any process in that direction without condemning either of them?
Well, you can condemn the war, you can condemn the aggression, you can condemn the flagrant disregard of UN instruments. That you have to. But once you enter into a negotiation, I mean, we sometimes deal in marriage, conflictual marriage situations, and you know that somebody will say, well, the priest is listening more to the husband, or the priest is listening more to the wife, and then they knock you. But until you can work at what I call a doable position, you don't have to go there and say, I, as a negotiator, I'm going to win. You know that these two sides have locked horns, but you need to find what are the low-lying fruits for them? How can you affirm them to say, okay, fine. I mean, you disagree. Let's start from disagree. But let's look at the human impacts. Let's look at the economic impact. Let's look at the impacts on God's environment. Let's look at to what end is this war? And then maybe, and that's how you break bit by bit. And I regret that people's lives are being lost. Soldiers from Russia are dying. People in Ukraine are dying. But the emotional and the spiritual death that you and I and the world over that we're going through can never be left to politicians only, can never be left to Ukraine and Russia. So we will be failing in our vocation as clerics, as good-willing global citizens, and as people of prayer. We will have to pray for peace. And, there's a beautiful prayer that I read today, but that our words of prayer to be translated into bridges of this peace, into practical expression of these leaders are people of faith. These leaders come from the acting environment. Where are the actors to talk to the others, to say, can we act peace? Can we act a just solution? Can we act an orthodox political leader solution? And where do we draw the line? And I'm sure I'm very hopeful. And my prayer is, as we condemn, let's also look at, we call it an Ubuntu ethic that says my humanity is tied to those that suffer the world over, whether it's Yemen or northern Nigeria or Palestine or Ukraine. And I need to do something, need to brighten the corner where I'm at in order to really pray for positive outcomes that do not just sit in despair and say, well, Russia is stronger than Ukraine, and Ukraine must just be bossed around.
And I suppose
so that's the basis of why this bothers me. But again, why I have hope that diplomacy can never fail. Intervention by religious leaders and people of faith has never failed.
Anglican Archbishop of Cape Town, Thabo Makgoba, good to speak to you. Thank you for your time, sir.